Hello, football fans, and welcome back to another James Talks About the NFL. And today I'm going to talk about Roger Goodell's continued stance on shortening the preseason. Now, I believe that this is good for all parties except for one major party, and I'm going to get into that in this video. Now, I believe that shortening the preseason would be good for TV networks, the fans, for TV networks and the fans, and that's basically all the parties that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, sure, I would love 2 more games of actual meaningful football. I mean, I kinda tune into the preseason every year to a certain extent. Actually, not really. Just a little bit here and there. But the thing is that I tune into the regular season a lot more than the preseason, and I'm pretty sure that any football fan who is human can agree with me on that. Now, the party that it might not be good for is the coaches. Now, Roger Goodell has said that it does not take 4 games to shrink the roster size down, but I disagree. I think that you need 4 games to determine the roster size, or determine who gets cut and who you decide to keep on the team. Unless, and this might only be in the short term where coaches struggle with it, and I think it will only be in the short term, as coaches eventually adapt to things. Of course, that's just life, where if something changes, you adapt to it. But I think in the short term, for a year or 2, maybe even 3 years if it's extreme enough, coaches will struggle to adapt, and that's just the bottom line. So in the short term, shortening the preseason could be bad for coaches. Now, the thing is that it's good for the fans and the networks, because like CBS, Fox, NBC, every network that does football, or that broadcasts NFL games, more money is getting put into their pockets, because I guarantee you that they get more money from regular season games than preseason games. They get more money from postseason games than they do regular season games. And for when they each cover the Super Bowl every few years, I believe this year it is going to be CBS that covers it, Super Bowl 54 that is, then they get more money than they do in the playoffs. And then Roger Goodell will get more money as well, as he is the owner of the league, or at least I believe. I haven't had any judgment to tell me otherwise. And Roger Goodell has said that, just as I said, Roger Goodell has said that it does not take coaches 4 games, or that, it does not take coaches 4 games to determine roster cuts. Sir, have you seen Hard Knocks before? Have you watched Hard Knocks at all? Even though he has said that a couple of coaches have said that it doesn't take 4 games. Which coaches, dude? Which coaches? Which coaches? Are they head coaches? Are they assistant coaches? Are they successful head coaches? Are they crappy head coaches? Or unproven head coaches? What type of coaches are we talking about here? Or are they even coaches in the first place? I mean, you haven't even said that they're head coaches. As a matter of fact, I mean, if a couple of competent coaches or veteran coaches come out and say, hey, it actually doesn't take us 4 games to shrink down the roster size. It only takes us 2. Then I'll believe it, because I have watched Hard Knocks before, and sure, some of those battles and some of the years that Hard Knocks has covered teams are done by the 3rd week of the preseason. But that doesn't mean every single battle across the league is set in stone by the 4th game. I mean, I'm not even sure if Roger Goodell has any experience being a coach, an administrator, a scout, or anything to that nature. I mean, surely to be an owner, he had to have some experience. One could argue, and I would get your point, but I could also see someone typing down in the comments saying, well, he attends NFL games like the Super Bowl and the opener and other games like that. And I say that that's great. I'm glad that he is interested in the product that he is owning. That would be like I was going to make a comparison, but it wouldn't quite have been fair. I was going to say that would be like the owner of a beer company appearing in some of the commercials. It's like, yes, of course the guy is interested in what he's owning. But yes, who's to say that when he's watching the games, he's not actually thinking about something else other than what is actually going on at the game? You know, I would love it if someday somebody actually sat down with him and interviewed him and was like, and just asked him questions that only true football fans would know. Like, hey, what's the hot route in an offense if the defense is in a bear front and they're going to send, and the play is engage 8? What would he say? The hot route would be a slant or a curl or something like that. Just something quick to get the ball out of your hands. I would love for someone to test him on his football knowledge, is what I'm saying. But do I think it would be a good idea? Yes. Now, I'd like to hear from some actual head coaches, like their words, not Roger Goodell saying like, hey, these people have said this. Well, I could say, hey, well, some head coaches have told me that they really love my content and that you should subscribe and that they are going to hire me on as a scout. Would anyone believe it? I bet a couple of people would. But I wouldn't believe myself. If I was a different person watching this video and I said that, I would say no, that is not true. Where's the proof? And sure, it's not as extreme in Roger Goodell's case, but I just don't buy that NFL coaches have said that without them actually saying it. But yes, all in all, I think it is a good thing. I think I've said that a couple of... excuse me. But all in all, I think it is a good thing. I think I've said that a couple of times. But ultimately, more football would be good. One thing I've almost forgotten to mention is that you've got to keep in mind that if the NFL expands to 18 games, which is what I would think they would do, with the 2 extra games that they would take away from the preseason, is that a lot more NFL records would go down. Like single season records. And maybe eventually career records, because there's more meaningful games. Well, some people would argue that the preseason is meaningful. So let me take that back. Games with actual statistics. So, an NFL player would play, on average, over a 7-year career. They would play, let's see, 7 times 10 is 70. And then 7 times 5, 35. And then plus 7, so 112 games. So, say the average career is 7 years, which is what it was about 10 years ago. I know it's about 3 years now, but let's just say the average career is 7 games, just to put it in perspective, okay? So if you are an NFL player and your career lasts 7 years, and you play all 16 games all throughout your career, you don't get hurt, you're not on the bench for a single one, you will play and start in 112 games. Now, let's consider 18 games to a year. Okay, so it's simple. We do the same simple math that I keep bumping into my desk. So let's do the same simple math that we just did, but multiply it by 18 instead of 16. So you have 7 times 20 is 240, minus 14 because 7 times 2 is 14. So you have 226 games. That's over 100 more games over a career. So, if you say, hey, career records won't go down as fast, well, that's just untrue. And that math just proves it. So, just think about it. And I wonder how long it would take for NFL records to fall. Like, receiving touchdowns, receiving yards, passing touchdowns, passing yards, rushing touchdowns in a season, rushing yards in a season. And then you go to the defense, you have total tackles in a season. And then you have interceptions in a year, sacks in a year, interceptions by a whole team, tackles by a whole team, sacks by a whole team. I wonder how that would impact points per game, though. I really wonder if the points per game that an offense would produce would go up or down or stay the same. I wonder if the points per game allowed by a defense would go up or down or stay the same. Or I wonder if the points per game on an offense go up, then the points per game allowed on the defense was more because the offense scored more, or in the complete opposite where the offenses can't score as many points, so the defenses aren't allowing as many points. I don't know, but it would be very exciting for the NFL to move to an 18-game season, which, just as I said, I'm assuming would happen with only 2 preseason games instead of 4. So, yes, and that's why I think it's a good idea. For everybody except the head coaches in the short term, not in the long term, because eventually NFL head coaches learn to adapt. Every head coach has had to adapt at some point in their coaching career, whether it be as a position coach, as a coordinator, or as a head coach, and they will do so again. So, I do believe that that is all that I have for today. And as always, go Panthers!